Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcia Mode-Stavros, a practitioner here at Light on the Mountains, and it's wonderful to see all of you on this beautiful sunny morning. I invite you, first of all, to go into that special, personal place where you feel the connection with the divine. I know there is an incredible life force, Father, Mother, Spirit, God, the isness, the allness, the order behind the cosmos. I know this life force to be all-providing, all-sustaining, and all-renewing. And this morning I give great thanks for knowing that truth. I give great thanks for Light on the Mountains, for Reverend John, for RL and Max, for Sarah doing the live stream, for her mom, who's representing the board. I give thanks for this community and for all of those who are reaching us from afar. I give thanks, and together we say, and so it is. Well, I recently discovered a Facebook page that has quickly become a favorite. It's entitled View from My Window. It was started in March of 2020 by a Belgian graphic artist living in Amsterdam. She gazed out of her apartment window and realized it would be her solitary view for as long as the pandemic lockdown continued. And she asked herself what that view might be on the other side of the world. 2 years and 2 million followers later, people from 100 countries can enjoy seeing photos from around the world and the accompanying stories of ordinary people, their views and their outlooks on life. Besides being able to see a sunset from Budapest or a shot of Manhattan from a 28th floor window, what is particularly striking to me is the accompanying insights into how a sense of place provides comfort, reassurance, and peace. A woman in California, USA, wrote, "It isn't easy or what I expected, but this view helps me breathe a little easier." Another posted from Kurdistan, "I share with you our joy and the view of the city center. Eyes rejoice in the beauty of the world." From Italy, a man wrote, "In this place, I feel at peace." Someone in Finland pictured their neighbor's home and said, "I see the lights on at my neighbor's, and it comforts me when I go to bed." And from New Jersey, the following, "The past few years have been difficult for our family. We lost both of our moms during this pandemic. Yet the one thing that kept me grounded was starting my day with this little view of the sun peeking through the windows and shining in our little piece of the world." I believe there is incredible sacredness when we feel connected to our surroundings, grounded by sense of place, a feeling of belonging, whether experienced from the view outer window or by sitting in our favorite reading chair. These places, simple though they may be, offer a rootedness, a feeling of connection, whether to a physical place, a memory, a person, or a world larger than what we can physically see. As we notice, our sense of place widens our gaze, offering a spiritual connection that gives one a sense that they are part of their place, one with it, surrounded through and through, here and with something bigger. This spiritual center and the teachings it offers invites us to lean into this sense of place. This morning, within this physical room, there's a feeling of acceptance and comfort and oneness. And there is a connected feeling between this room and those who are joining us remotely from their special places near and far. And there's more. In our teachings, we are invited to go within to that sacred place, wherein we feel washed through by our oneness with the divine. As our founder, Ernest Holmes, wrote, "There is a place in us which lies open to the infinite. Whoever becomes receptive to the idea of peace, poise, and calm Whoever embodies these divine realities finds them flowing through him, and he becomes peaceful, poised, and calm. Perhaps the sacred place within us offers the most magnificent view of all, an everlasting foundation and an ever-present sense of place. The view looking out from our window is surely a part of this, but the view inward is particularly dazzling, as we are transformed by the radiance of a sacred place within that offers strength and reassurance and peace. And so it is. And now if you'll join in the affirmation, it's printed on the bottom, in the middle of your program in red. Spirit's life is my life now. This is true in all that I perceive as good, and in all that I perceive as imperfect.
Thanks.
Thank you, RL. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Marcia. I just love that analogy. It's just so perfect for the last 2 years that for me, and I think for many of us, have a feeling of being stuck. I don't need this right now. Haven't you felt stuck? Like, when's it going to move? When's something different going to happen? And at the same time, that woman choosing to look at her limitation and realizing that she was unlimited in her experience. And how amazing. I mean, really. And that we do have that choice. And I know that even though we say we are always at choice, I have found that choices that in my ego want aren't always available. But there are choices nonetheless. I can choose to be grateful, or I can choose to throw a fit, and I can vacillate between the two. And if we just keep going back to it and just like calm ourselves down and go, okay, in this mess, which seems to be so limited at times and to seem to be like a log jam, that there's a lot going on. In fact, I think, as I've said multiple times the last couple of years, I think the universe has given us a time out to think about some things. But a lot of action has been going on nonetheless. I think we've been under this illusion that nothing has been happening, just because we can't always do exactly what we want to do when we want to do it. And to know that the conditions change. There are times that, of course, there is a risk in just about everything that we do, and sometimes they think, okay, I'm comfortable going to a restaurant, and maybe as things happen, we go, well, we're going to put that on hold for a couple weeks. And so we're always looking at it, but it always seems like there's a limitation to look at, and even a sense of being stuck. And even though so much has happened in 2 years, at the same time, we feel stuck. Isn't that interesting, that both can coexist at the same time? And if we look at our lives, today we're going to talk about being stuck and how we unstuck ourselves. Is that even a word? Unstuck. Maybe that is a word. But I think that's part of our spiritual journey, is to actually be in timeouts and periods feeling like we're stuck. And when we're in them, we can forget of how rich they actually are. So if you've forgotten a little bit, or if you're saying now like, okay, there's nothing rich happening right now. I just want to go to Target without a mask. That's all I ask. Nothing big. I don't need to know the secrets of the universe. I just want to go to Target without a mask and be able to drink my coffee, because I go to Starbucks first and then I drink my coffee while I'm shopping at Target. That's all I want right now. My needs are simple. But that's not quite available right now, and it contributes to our feeling stuck. And it contributes to us getting in a low mood. It contributes to some of us truly throwing a fit in public or on an airplane or something like that. But if you take an honest look, let's look, it's easier in the rearview mirror than to look in the forward-looking mirror. bring up a time in your life, and we always are feeling stuck, but I think there's a couple big stuck times, isn't there? Like it just seems like nothing is working, that everything seemingly needs to change, and it can seem in that moment that nothing is happening. But if you look in your rearview mirror a little bit, and if you really sit with it for a while, you'll know that a great deal was happening. I mean, just think back a little bit to one of your all-time, I was stuck here and didn't even know what to do. And maybe it lasted for not only days, months, and even a couple years or so. And you just thought nothing is happening. But now in retrospect, you can see how much was happening and how rich it actually was, even if it seemed like a lot of growth was happening on the back burner that you weren't fully conscious of yet. And that there was a moment that you became unstuck or out of that period of your life. And it's what I have found that change, physical change, will then happen very quickly. We did all this prep work unbeknownst to ourselves. And then suddenly we did it, and it was like, boom. First, I seemed like I was unstuck. I was stuck, and now it's like I'm getting whiplash because the change is wait a second. Okay, I prayed for, all this unstuck, but it's like, can we slow it down then? So just be aware of that. Because when we are in the midst of something being frustrating, it can seem like it's never going to change. And example I've talked about in different times through these last years is when I finished the School of Ministry, there was a 2-year period between, walking with the cap and gown to arriving here. And I felt so much happened in my life after graduation, and it physically moved me to a place where I could be stuck for 2 years. I just thought, wow, that's some momentum. Boy, everything changed. Here you are, and do some inner work because you're not going to go to wherever you need to go because you got some work to do. And I can remember in those 2 years, again, just feeling so frustrated. It's like, when am I going to get what I want? When am I going to get what I had set my intentions for? When am I going to get for the thousands and thousands of dollars I spent on a master's program that I could, officially be a reverend person to do what I'm doing now? And it seemed like a cruel joke. I mean, it really did. And I know you all have a similar story where you thought we're good to go, and it's like, sit down for a while. You've got some work to do. So that is the essence of being stuck, and it's really an illusion because you're not. Things are going on. And so part of that, and just even with RL talking about breathing, is just like, okay, I'm not happy about it. Again, not happy about no mask at Target. But I have to trust that there's something significant going on now that will prepare me for when it appears, the appearance will be to not be stuck anymore. So this month, to help us talk about things like this, if you read my blog, I found this great book from a workshop I took a couple weeks ago when I was at the Centers for Spiritual Living Convention. It's called Blue Collar Spirituality, Finding a God That Worked. And this is written, and the workshop was given by one of my colleagues, Reverend Michael McMurrow. And I love this for many different reasons. One, look how thin it is. You can read it in one night. No, but I like it when you just get to the point. I don't need 10 analogies. Give me one. But what I like about this and Mike is that, for one, his background is so different than mine. That he came along his path to some similar conclusions. I mean, I had to be because he's a minister in the same organization, but he went by a completely different route. I also love, which you may get a little bit if you read this book, but you get from him in person, he is just so gracious at laughing at himself. And I think that's a great quality to have, to just really look at yourself and go, what a mess I was, and be able to laugh about it. So his background, and then blue collar spirituality, he was a construction worker and contractor for a little bit over 30 years. So completely different than my life. A world that I know virtually nothing about. And how he got, and looking at his version of getting stuck as opposed to my version of getting stuck. And so if you're not a contractor or a construction worker, you might like this, because it's like, oh, he got stuck in a completely different way. How creative, kind of thing. But he laughs at himself, and he talks about how he embodied every possible negative stereotype that a straight white male could possibly embody. That he went for it. You know, we're in Olympics now. He went for the gold. He's like, let's just not be this closed-minded. Let's be this closed-minded. Let's really go for it. Let's be closed-minded in public and have people mock me for being closed-minded in public. And I like he writes this. It says, I learned to work like a man, drink like a man, and fight like a man. It was a Neanderthal existence. So he just looks at it like, what? He looks back how many years it was, like, what was I up to? Why was I doing that? What led me to that way of thinking? And what leads any of us to our way of thinking, quite frankly? The way that we grow up, the house we grow up, the careers that we seem to find our way into, that there are always negative stereotypes and personas to take on regardless of where we choose to go to. In any profession, in any walk of life. I certainly had clients years ago that were in construction, and I don't remember them being Neanderthalish. So it's not endemic to the profession, but that's how he brought it into himself. And as he's looking back now, again, it's always great to look in the rearview mirror, isn't it? And him looking back and thinking, boy, was I stuck. Boy, was I a mess. And boy, was I just willing to not take any responsibility for it. And he said as he was coming to the main event of being as the most unstuck a person could probably be and wanting to blame everyone else, I guess he went through a divorce. And of course, it was all his wife's fault. And if he got divorced, everything would be different. It wasn't. And then I think a big turning point, and he talks about it in his book as well, is when his father took him aside. And he said his father, an Irish immigrant father with a really strong accent, an Irish brogue, and I'm not going to try to do an Irish brogue for you, but imagine my voice in an Irish brogue. And his father just said, your life is a mess. He said, your life is like a manure wheel that you go on your lawn, you know, in the spring to fertilize. He says, your manure wheel is going 24 hours a day throwing manure in your life. And now realize that those weren't the exact words that he used. And again, just make it as colorful as you can imagine. I'm not going to do that on tape, actually. But we all know that it probably, you know, not to stereotype, but if you had an Irish immigrant father with a brogue accent, the words are not going to be quite so, I don't know, controlled, let's just say. So it brought him, I think, finally to the realization that there needed to be a different way. And at moments, that can almost be another big frustration point. You realize that you need to change, not only on the outside, but finally that you need to change on the inside. Now, I think we've been kind of socialized to think that it's all an outside sort of thing. That if I just change the scenery, that it will be okay. And to a certain extent, that might work out in some cases. But in the philosophy that we teach here, we teach that it's all an inside job. It's true change and transformation starts on the inside. That what we come to believe and entertain as true on the inside has a way to recreate itself on the outside. So that's the whole thing around prayer and setting intentions and meditation. It's to have a cleaning out on the inside so things can line up differently outside. And yes, it seems to have a lag effect. So it gets frustrating because we think, oh, I need to change. And again, we might just run out again and try to, change things around really quickly without realizing, no, you need to stick with the inside job sort of change for a while. The other things will will come in due time. And like I said before, that if after a period of being stuck, when you've done that inner work, the outside can seem to like change overnight. And I know it certainly has for me in a couple instances, like, again, boy, that it changed. So in looking at change and through the eyes of Mike, we're going to use some construction worker analogies here. So we're going to talk about concrete. Don't you love concrete? I do. I never really thought as much about concrete as I have in the last couple weeks, but it is such a great analogy. So Mike gets really, animated talking about concrete. That as a construction worker and contractor, concrete is your friend. It can do almost anything. Think about it. It is this thing that you create that's fluid and liquid, and it can do almost not anything, but so many different things. But he says the important thing as a construction worker is that before you call over the truck to, throw down the concrete, you have to create a form. Now, we talk often about form in a different way here, that our thoughts go into form, but this is an actual form, that you have pieces of wood or plastic, or if you're going to set a sidewalk, that you have to lay down the boundaries. And that sometimes the most difficult or time-consuming thing is to lay down those boundaries. And not only can you do, surfaces that you walk in, you can create pylons and underground garages but the sky's the limit on what you can envision that would take to the properties of concrete. Isn't it really kind of amazing? And it's lasting. That there are still structures and roadways from ancient Rome that are in use today. It's really kind of amazing. It's like this seemingly indestructible substance. But as we use concrete as a metaphor, our life as it has set can seem a lot like concrete, and it can seem like it is indestructible. It can seem like the things that I set up maybe in my 20s or 30s I can't get away from as I go later on in my life. That the boundaries that I set and spent so much time, or maybe I didn't spend time, I just kind of did it haphazardly, but you set the forms and you poured the concrete. And I was talking with someone this morning about some of the concrete we laid in 20-year-olds, and like, God, we really should reconsider that. But what were you thinking, John? But I also know that wasn't permanent, but it has the illusion of being permanent. Interesting, I remember when I was about 7 or 8 years old that the city in the town that I was living poured fresh sidewalks. And my brother and I did what all 7 and 9-year-olds did. We put our initials in it. And I haven't been down the street in a long time, but I think it's been probably about 25 years, and I was driving down the street, and I thought, I don't know what got into me. I stopped the car to look. It was still there. And unless the city has done, redo again, it is still there. So again, there is this illusion that it is permanent. But as Mike was telling us, it says that in his work as a contractor, it was rare that someone would hire him to put up a building on a lot that had never had a structure on it before. It was San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, pretty well populated. He says the first thing that he had to do 90% of the time was to destroy what was already there. And often it included a lot of concrete. So the illusion is that it is permanent and that you will never get to it, but there is a method to do it. First, again, you need a new idea. You need some new forms. So you start with idea. So imagine if our concrete was still smelling. Let's go take it down the concrete. What would we do? I don't know. I'd hit it with a mask. I don't know how to take away concrete. But you start with an idea. Then you have to gather resources. And then you have to have the right tools. And this is not just, I hope you're getting this as an analogy. We're not having a school here on how to deal with concrete. But this is how we redo our lives and to get unstuck in some ways. And even if it seems like it's a long period of time, that'll take a lot of time. So let's talk about our entryway. Let's talk about it. So when 20 years ago we bought this building, there was a 3-month redo, and we had to build that nice little rampy thing. Is that a contractor word? A rampy thing. And of course there was a lot of planning that went in. And I remember that I was there the few days that the workers were putting up the forms. That first, you get that little kind of, what do you call the thing that kind of holds it up? You got this and then you got the, But anyway, obviously I have not worked in construction. Yeah, it was interesting. So I was on a daily thing here with Stella Gray, who recently passed, and Suzanne Walsh, and we were the on-site people to work with the contractor, me. And I remember thinking, I don't remember this class in the School of Ministry to work with. And I knew nothing about concrete. But anyway, so we were usually on site when major things were going to happen. And I clearly remember the day when they had done the forms, and then the big day when the big cement mixer came and they poured the ramp leading up to the door right here. And boy, it just seemed permanent. But we came to the realization that there were so many things wrong with that plan. But yet, it's pretty permanent, isn't it? It cost a lot of money to put that thing. How could we ever afford to do something different with a different idea? Again, the things that go through our minds. How could we have the resources? How would it be done? It seemed like such a big job. Here was the deal. So you may have noticed over the years, especially that portion of the building is a very shaded portion of the outside structure. That if ice is going to form anywhere, it's going to form there. And in the middle of the winter, we found that we started to need to have on Sunday morning a volunteer or two to kind of shepherd people over that because they were going to go down. And I can't tell you how nervous I get if I was in my office and I have the bird's eye view of it. If anyone was in the parking lot with a cane or walker, I thought, oh, this is a recipe for disaster. That we had to make sure that, to bring them through the obstacle course of that. And the better idea was, we need a snowmelt system. We need to not do this anymore like this. And of course, again, the doubts, but it would cost so much. Someone even told me that it would be like $1,000 a month electricity bill to run the thing. And we're like, well, we don't want that. We can't do that. I think I better just take the person's hand that has a cane or a walker and just be good with that. And so we actually kind of went through that for a couple years of, it's not working, but there's all these reasons why we can't fix it. Again, you see the analogy here? My life in this area is not working. I really should get to it, and here are all the reasons why I can't. And often they are exterior reasons that we have made up, or they're reasons of concern. And often, usually the top of the list is money. Oh no, how could we ever get the money for that? Or that's not available in the town that I live. Oh, that would entail me calling a certain person or people up that I'm really intimidated to talk to get information about. So it's best for me just not to do it because it's just way too much to ask of myself over here. But if you are truly on that inner transformation program, it starts to gnaw at you, that list. Like, I guess I better call that person. I guess I better really see what the cost really is. I guess I really need to see if there are resources that I haven't allowed myself to see. That's where the transformation happens, when that list that had been used to keep you away is the one that you're like, oh, I just have to look at the list. So it was really clear that elderly people with canes falling at our doorstep on Sunday was not a good look for us. I don't know if anyone actually fell there, but there were some close calls. And so one of our treasurers here, Bob and Barbara Grabowski, thank you, they decided, and I think it was because they were on the verge of falling out there, says, okay, here's a donation. We're going to redo this. And so I was also there the day, and again, it's like, how are we ever going to get rid of this thing? 2 guys with a jackhammer in 2 hours, it's gone. I mean, think of it. That you've worried about, how will we ever change this? How will I ever get rid of this? How could we possibly do it? And there's like 2 guys who knew what they were doing, the jackhammer, and boom. If I would have gone to lunch, I would have missed it. Really? I mean, and haven't you, when you've worked through something and you allowed yourself to open up to a different possibility, even though it was scary, and it happened, you went, well, that was easy. Why did I take so long to do this? It took me 10 years to come to this decision, and boom, once I made the decision or made the right phone call or went through the list, it just happened. What was wrong with me? It's interesting. And of course, the solution was take it up, put all those nice little pipe things in, and we have a nice water heater. I don't know if it's water or something else there that's dedicated for that purpose. And then instead of concrete, we put pavers on it. The ultimate of if you need to change your idea, you can do it at any time. Because those pavers, even I can take them up. It's pretty easy. So again, let's get back to our analogy. We had a different idea of what that can be. We finally were ready to engage with it to make a change. As we were, the resources had an interesting way of showing up in a manner that we had never considered. And then we hired the right people with the right tools that could do it like that. Why did we wait so long? Why do any of us wait so long when it comes down to that? Now, I do know that there is a timing in everything. And back to my, as I call my 2 years in the desert in Oklahoma City, there was an inner process that needed to happen over a period of time. But when it, truth be told, when we get to that point, it really got down to that again. What is your better idea? What are the resources at hand? And if you don't see any, what inner work can you do to see the resources that are actually there? And then in the real world, as we say, you pray and then move your feet. So in the real world, what are the actual tools, whether it's a jackhammer or anything else of unlimited availability that you need to use? Pretty interesting when you just bring it down to that. So, but when you're in it, it doesn't seem so obvious, does it? So, like where we are today, what do we want this world to look like? My answer right now is I'm not sure. No, really, let's be honest. I'm not sure. I know some of the spiritual qualities. I want to be involved with it. I want us to all have a greater sense of the divine in the center of all things, and even if you do a secular version of that there is sacredness within all things. I want us all, that regardless of what we seek to do, to know that we affect other people and we want to do so in a way that is kind to them in the world, regardless of our opinions or politics or anything, to know that if we all come from that place and we may have different ideas about it, but it will somehow work because the motivating idea is pure. And I just want the world to work better for more people. I don't know what that looks like. So that's kind of where I am with that. So if you're saying, can I set the forms? I can't say that I want these people to show up here and do this at a certain time in a certain city. But the forms I'm setting are along those lines, of broader lines. And usually healing starts at those broader ideas. And then for us to all look at what are our resources, not inner and outer resources. It's interesting how when someone may have an idea of something that will serve a lot of people, that the first thing again, oh, there's no money for that. How will that happen? Now, they just need to figure it out on their own. But to get away from that and to think that, okay, well, that's kind of an old model where we think instantly we can't have what's good or what we want. So I have to believe that there is a way for that to be possible. And again, I don't know what that looks like. We always think if we just pass a couple laws or do this or that, and it will involve all that, but to just all of us, again, regardless of what you think about politics, regardless of what you think about masks, regardless of what you think about vaccines, to think there's got to be a way that this works. So that's what I'm working on. There has to be a way that works. And when we get to tools, boy, there is just unlimited ways to make stuff happen in this world. And I know that as we guide ourselves through those other two things, the tools and the means will become more obvious. So that's what I think this time in history is about, to work all this out. And it may not seem to happen perfectly or boom, we all did it and everyone's on the same page. It's all about the direction, I think. And it's still going to be messy. But I think we have the option of, in this time that we seem to be so stuck, to be unstuck in a way that's amazing. So I just want to close today just reading a little bit from Reverend Mike, from his first chapter, which is called That Your Life Is Not Set in Concrete. It's like $10 on Amazon. I would say get it. I'll probably use it at least 1 or 2 more Sundays. And you can it's even in the Kindle version. You can have immediate gratification. And today I think we could all use some immediate gratification because it seems like everything is on hold. So you could, like, on your phone now, go to Kindle and pay $10 and have it before you leave the building. I mean, isn't that amazing? But for those who will possibly get this book, this is on the last page of the first chapter, page 31. And it's about 3 paragraphs I want to read to close. And his heading for this is called Substance Bound Only by Imagination. If we imagine life as a thought world, we can see how just as concrete is the substance held in the materials we've built, life is a substance with which our thinking sets the form of the desired structure or results. Concrete is a substance that has uniformity to it and is bound by the physical laws in which it is used. Imagine life as substance, the logical result of the tendency of our thought materializing. And not as some kind of Jedi mind trick, but as the logical result of our thinking. And just as the shape of concrete is bound only by the static form it fills, so our thoughts create the limits of our life's forms. Our thought, then, is bound only by our willingness to engage with imagination with as much courage as we can. Perhaps you believe yourself to not be imaginative. Not so. Every time you daydream, every time you think about her, every time you picture what you're going to do with your weekend, you're using your imagination because the weekend hasn't arrived yet. You engage your imagination with the ease of a child, even when you think you don't. Imagination has no prerequisites. You need no formal education to use it. In fact, some would argue that education could be a block to imagination if all we've learned is how to regurgitate facts, figures, and numbers. That said, the educated mind that is also imaginative is the most powerful, innovative tool we have. My point is simply that imagination is a thought tool you and I can use consciously. To give attention to the wildest imaginations for our life, to give these imaginings a voice, is to step out of old ways of thinking that up until now may have held us bound. And with our imagination, we can take our first giant leap to freedom. I forgot that was there. So, get the book. Listen, at least probably a couple more weeks we're going to use that. You know, I need to read this now. Maybe you do too. It's good for me. So let's just take this for prayer. In prayer, we often try to bring form to our lives. Let's use prayer to simply bring imagination to our lives. Regardless of the forms that may exist, let us open up to that divine creator that is within us and know that actually anything is possible. That we can open our heart and minds and see a completely different way. One for our entire lives we have never even known that it was there. It's like discovering a street in your town that you had never gone down and thought, gosh, this has always been there. And so we open ourselves to creativity and to know that the creative energy of the universe is already there. All we have to do is to say yes to it. And as we say yes, know that things actually also happen in Spirit's time. That we just have to say yes, to be willing to do the work and get out of the way and let it happen. Whether it's one day, 1 year, or 1 decade, it will happen. And so we give thanks for this amazing opportunity. This chance to get unstuck, this chance to let go of things that we have just been holding on for way too long. Not only as individuals and families, but as a people, these things that we just don't need them anymore. We gladly and happily and lovingly just put them in the rearview mirror and say yes to now and a greater future. And so in this yes, we do express gratitude, not for just what we have, but for what is guaranteed to be on the way. It is amazing because we allow it to be amazing. And in this Thanksgiving, we release it, we let it go, we let the creative power of spirits do its job, and know that our job to a certain extent is done for the moment because we have said yes. We let it go. We let it have a life of its own, and we are on board for the ride. And so it is.